Well, thanks a lot for joining us. Let's break down some great scouting that we've seen in day one. I'm Dave Shore. Joining me, Chris Ekstrand, NBA consultant. And Chris, let's just go big picture now. What kind of talent did we see tonight?
There are a lot of players here who are lesser known. They didn't play at the biggest schools, but they were great players. A lot of them were players of the year in their own conference. And it's a chance for them to get exposure in front of the NBA teams.
Before we talk about individual guys, tell me what a guy like you, what some other NBA personnel in the stands are looking for. Because what are they looking for individually that a guy is going to do to assert himself?
I think what we look for is how well do they do what they do. And by that I mean, if you're a rebounder, now that you're playing against all high-level guys in this event, can you still get that done, what you did in your conference? Now, you got 10 rebounds a game in the Missouri Valley Conference. Now you're playing against all the best, the elite from all these conferences. Can you still get that done? If you're a passer, can you still navigate the defense and make the passes that produce baskets for your team against other high-level players? So whatever you do, whatever your specialty is, we have Josh Reeves here from Penn State. I'll just use him as an example. He averaged 10 points a game. So why is he here? He's here because he was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He led the Big Ten in steals 3 years running, which is not an easy thing to do.
No.
But he's a great defender, and it took him about 30 seconds into his game to get a deflection that broke up a play that was going to be a layup for the other team. So you see, he's here as a defender, and he's doing the things that got him here in the first place, and that's what we like to see.
Yeah, see, that's why a guy like Chris is good, because he's already noticing deflections. I'm noticing whether or not a guy gets involved in the flow of the game from a scoring standpoint. All right, we saw a very competitive first game in this one. Just talk about a couple of players that jump off the top. This was Sales Systems and K&D Rounds Landscaping, and it came down to really a final play.
Yeah, I think the thing, I'll start with Daquan Jeffries. Here's a guy who I wish I had his physique. I wish I could order that up. But I saw him play for Tulsa last season for the first time, and he's a guy who, when you first see him, he's not a big scorer, so it doesn't jump out, but he does so many things well. One of the things he's got going for him is he's a 6'6" guy who has the hands of a 7-foot guy. What do I mean by that? He's cradling the ball like it's a softball. Wow. His hands are enormous. He's got those Kawhi Leonard mitts, and that enables the guy to play bigger than his height, because he's a 6'6", tremendous athlete, but when you put a set of hands like that on a guy who's already incredibly athletic, now he plays like he's 6'9", and you saw that in this game. He's getting into plays, he's defending, he's rebounding, plus he did something today that he didn't often get a chance to do at Tulsa, which was shoot the ball, and he made some perimeter shots in this game. If he can do that, along with all the other things he brings to the table, then the NBA people are going to be very interested.
We saw some we had a lot of players out there. We had Nick Perkins, I got a chance to talk to after the game. I thought he did a really nice job on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, Nick is kind of the old style big man, because he can really score when he's close to the basket. He actually can make a facing jump shot out to about 18 feet, which a lot of people don't know. But when I look at him, I see those European scouts who are up in the stands here salivating, because
okay.
On an NBA team, he's probably like a 11th or 12th man. He might make the NBA, but he's a guy that the way that the NBA has evolved now, with all three-point shooters at all 5 positions, there's not as much room for guys like Nick. Nick is unbelievably good, let's say 15 feet and in, and he actually can do a lot of things. He can actually make passes out of the post, high and low post. So he's a pretty versatile player. But if you put a guy like that in Europe, it's a plug and play. They can play him from day one. I mean, he has to learn the European style, but if I'm in Italy or Spain or France, I'm trying to get that guy, because what he does works over there. Everything he does is predicated on, he doesn't try to do anything that he's not capable of doing. And we love players like that. He doesn't go outside his skill set. He gets done the things that he can do.
Great point. In our other game, name me a couple of players that stood out. We found it interesting because in our post-game player of the game interviews, we talked to a young man from Wofford and Cornell. So it's not two huge programs that we often talk about in NCAA.
Yeah, I think let's take Matt Morgan from Cornell. I thought that the interesting thing about Matt is that he's only about 6'2", but he really isn't a point guard. He led the Ivy League in scoring 4 years in a row, which I don't know if that's ever been done before. It's an amazing accomplishment. He scored, obviously like 22,500 points. So he's a guy who can score all day long. He can shoot the long ball. But here, because of his size, he has to prove to the NBA people that he could at least play point guard in a pinch. He can be a backup point guard, let's say. He's not going to be your primary ball handler, decision maker, but he's going to be your secondary guy. And he, there were some good things, and there were some things where you saw, well, this guy's not used to having the ball as a point guard every possession. But the sweet thing about Matt is there were a couple times where there was a loose ball that was being batted around. His team came up with the loose ball, and they just cranked it out to him at the three-point line, and then you saw that beautiful jump shot. And he's always going to be able to do that. And as long as I've been in the NBA, and it's 29 years now, people have always said, well, he's too small to be a shooting guard because he's only 6'2". If you can make enough shots from deep, they'll find a place for you. They'll find a way to get you into the NBA. And this guy can shoot. You don't score, I don't care what conference it is, you don't score 2,500 points if you can't do something to get the ball in the basket. And he has a beautiful looking shot. And he's obviously coming from an Ivy League background. Yeah. He's a smart guy.
Oh.
He knows the game, and we'll probably see him cut out some of the mistakes he made tonight in the next game. But he always has that shot to fall back on because he's such a great shooter.
Give me one other name that stood out of the stat sheets for you.
Yeah, the guy that I thought really did well in that game that surprised me a little bit was Josh Reeves. We referred to him before from Penn State. It's not that he surprised me because I know he's a good player. We don't have anybody here who's not a good player. But he's known for his defense so much that when you get an offensive contribution from him, it's nice. It's nice to see him contribute on both ends of the court. So not only is he ball hawking, getting steals, stripping guys, but on the offensive end, he made a 3 in the first half, and to prove that wasn't a fluke, he made another one in the second half. And his jump shot looks better than I remember it when I watched him during the season. So the one thing that I like to stress about all these players is that they're seniors, but that doesn't mean they're not still getting better. People love to talk about, freshmen, one-and-done type guys. They have so much potential, they'll get better because, they're 19 now. Well, guess what? Guys who are 22, they're not finished products. This isn't what they're going to be in 3, 4, 5 years from now. Whether they're in Europe, in the NBA, wherever they are, they're going to be better players. And sometimes you can see subtle adjustments and improvements even during this week in Portsmouth. And I think a guy like Matt Morgan or a guy like Josh Reeves, you see them, they're taking in what the game is, what the style of play here is, which is not the same as their college team, and they're making adjustments, making improvements. So guys are going to get better and better.
This is a fantastic proving ground for these young men. Let me ask you two final things before we go. And that is, if you were advising these young men before they play in this tournament, what is the one thing you tell them you absolutely should not do when you're playing before scouts like this?
It's a very good question, and I can give you a very easy answer. If you didn't do it during your whole college career, don't come in here and try to do whatever that is. If you never shot a 3 because your coach said you can't shoot threes because you're not a good three-point shooter, don't come in here and prove him right by going 0 for 6 from three-point range. If you're a hustler, a rebounder, a defender, then do those things. Not everybody has to be a scorer, because I have news for these guys. If they're lucky enough to get onto an NBA roster, they're coming in as an 11th or 12th man. They have to do all those intangible things that don't show up in the box score, while the James Hardens of the world are going to be scoring 30 points. So they're not going to be the featured attraction. The only guy we've had here in recent memory who has elevated himself to being a feature attraction in the NBA is Jimmy Butler. But most guys who play here who make the NBA, they're role players. Maybe they're a three-point shooter. That's a role.
Yep.
Maybe you're a defender.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a rebounder. But whatever that role is, do what got you here. If you did something and you excelled in your conference in college, come in here and show us more of that. Because that's what GMs, that's what coaches want. A coach wants to say, if I put Matt Morgan in a game, I know I'm getting three-point shooting. Anything else he gives me is gravy, but I know I'm getting that because he makes threes. We'll come in here and make threes, and he did that tonight.
All right, and here's the final one. A lot of times in the NBA, some of us, when we were sitting around, we'd say, was this guy a product of his system? there are a lot of colleges that have great systems. How common is it for guys to be able to unplug themselves from their college system and really shine?
I think it depends. I think it depends on what level they played at, what speed they played at. One of the things you see is some of the slower tempo guys, they played in a walk it up system in college, and they get out here, and let's face it, it's a freelance all-star type of atmosphere. These coaching staffs are good, but they only have 2 days with the players. They put in 4 or 5 simple sets, and that's it, and everything else is going to be freelance basketball. So if you're used to playing in a very structured system and you come here, it really knocks you back a little bit. And there were a couple of guys, just like every year, that you see where, okay, it's going to take them a day to adjust, and it's more of a, I don't want to say a playground game, but it's an unstructured game where you see more one-on-one play, and they have to get used to that. For some guys, it's just the size difference. If you're playing for Montana, for example, Tyler Hall is a big guard in the Big Sky Conference because he's 6'5". But he comes out here, every 2 guard we have out here is 6'5", right? So now he's not picking on a guy who's 6'2", who's trying to guard him. He's being guarded by somebody who is his height and is just as athletic as he is. And that's an adjustment.
All right, Chris. Thanks a lot. We'll see you for day 2.